this out again right before the midterms of next year if you guys are so proud of your position.
Right.
And they still said no. So we want people to starve and be trapped at the airport rather than run the government.
That's right. And I'm glad you said that, because that was the motion that was happening in the Senate today, right? So we had, the Democrats, Senate leader or Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, as you said, say, look, let's open the government. Let's fund these ACA subsidies, the healthcare subsidies, for 1 year, as you said. And the Republicans very quickly said, no, we're not doing that. At the same time, the administration was trying to, appeal a ruling from a judge who said, no, I told you not once, not two rulings actually we had last week, I think, but the judge who said, I told you, you need to fund all of the benefits for November right now. And they said, well, we don't want to, right? And then just before we came on the air, we saw that that judge, that appeals court said, no, actually, you need to go on and give people the food that they need. What does this say, right? What does this say about this, not just the administration, but the entirety of the Republican Party, that you would fight so hard to not feed people?
I don't think that most of the Republicans see it that way. At least they won't say so publicly. It's not about feeding people. The people who are not eating right now, the people who aren't working right now, the people who aren't receiving their Social Security checks, the people who aren't working in our nuclear facilities, the people who aren't guiding our planes right now, they see them as perfectly reasonable sacrificial pawns in order to break the opposition. That's how they see it. The Republican Party's goal is to absolutely break the Democratic Party so that they can go on and do the kind of stuff they want to do, which is eliminate 3/4 of these government positions anyway.
Right.
So the Democrats are holding the line, not because they're even asking for anything new.
Right.
They're just asking the Republicans to maintain functionality.
That's right. I think that this is a good point, and also I thank you for raising the fact that that the Democrats try to put forward a deal today. And so when we talk about, and I know that we hear all the time that, the Democrats aren't standing up, right, that they're not fighting hard enough. And in many cases, that is true, and I would agree with that in some cases. But we also need to point to the fact when they have the fact that they have held the line on this, that they've said, don't open, like the government should be opened. Yes. And also, given that you cut so much already, you've already cut from food assistance, you've already cut from healthcare. We should open the government, but also you need to give people back what they need to deserve. So we do see the Democrats, both in the House and in the Senate, where last time they kind of caved, right? Like they caved the last time on the spending bill. And this time they're saying, no, we won't. We're not going to let the American people just be out there on our own. What do you make of the politics around that for the Democrats, particularly given the good news of Tuesday, that they are still in this moment trying to hold the line to make sure that the American people get the most basic of what our government should be providing?
Well, I think there's a couple things to take into consideration. One, obviously, Democratic leadership was bolstered by victory sort of across the board, right, on Tuesday. So now they're like, okay, cool. The public's not punishing us for this. It's one thing to look at a poll every day. It's like, look, it's one thing to look at your bank account and see a number. It's something else to have some cash in your hand, right? Now the Democrats have cash in hand, right? They could look at the poll numbers and say the majority of the public blames Republicans, but until they saw the public punish Republicans on Tuesday, they weren't entirely sure.
Right.
Now they can dig in their heels and say, look, I have been one to suggest all along that they should probably be asking Republicans for more. If the Republicans are going to be this recalcitrant and this difficult and not do anything, then fine, give them your whole list. Right. Yesterday's price ain't today's price. And make them come to the table with more than just the bare minimum. I think it's important for anybody listening to understand. This is not just an issue of, let's fund Obamacare subsidies for the next year. All of the things in that big, terrible bill that the Republicans passed this summer, that has cuts to Obamacare in the bill. Right. They just don't kick in until 2027. So this is protecting something that's already going to get cut later on. Yeah. So the Republicans are saying, I don't want to deal at all. The Democrats are like, look, we at least got to do this minimum stuff.
Right. Yeah, and it is. I mean, the timing on all of this when the big terrible bill was being debated and then passed, there was all this sort of strangeness, right? Or maybe it's not strange at all, right? Around the timing, right, of when certain cuts would happen, right? All of that timing very closely tied to elections, right? That so the sort of like when you get your health care cut, who are you going to blame? Right right before an election, and I think that's and we have the Democrats saying, and to your point, and you said it so well, the Democrats saying if you believe in your position of not providing people with what they need in order to be able to afford health care, then you'll be able to defend that position in 2026. When if you give us this deal, right, then you can defend your position all over again then and persuade the American people that they should want to have assistance cut.
Yeah, and they know that it's not a popular position. That's why they're hiding.
Right.
Look, if I know my mom is gonna be mad at my bad grades, okay, do I tell her on Monday? No, she's gonna be mad all week. I'm gonna tell her on Friday, right? Right when she gets home, she shows she's in a good mood. I've made dinner, blah blah blah. That's when you give people bad news. Right. Republicans know that they've got nothing for bad news, right. So they try to wait till you chilling out, you have some dinner, some Netflix.
Right, and the bad news for them is bad news with their own constituents, right? And I think that one of the things that they tried to spin coming out of Tuesday's elections was essentially just like, is blue states and blue cities doing blue states and blue cities things, right? And so we're not concerned about that. Not acknowledging the fact that, the losses for them, right? The sort of devastating losses for them happened in places across the country, right? From Georgia to Mississippi. The idea that every county in Virginia moved toward Democrats, but this is also true with their constituents who are being harmed by their decisions to cut first in the big horrible bill, right? To cut funding from all kinds of programs, but even now when we talk about SNAP. And so what is their thinking on this, where they think that they can do damage to their own constituents and not a little bit of damage, right? This isn't just whatever they want to try and say. It's just the blue cities, or it's the inner city people, I think is what Tuberville said. It's the inner city people who are going to be mad, and they're all Democrats, so they'll be mad at the Democrats. It's not that. So what is the thinking of Republicans and the Trump administration to say, like, you're going to be deeply harmed and farmers and all of that, right? But we're going to just keep pushing ahead.
Here's the thing. If you're standing in the middle of a party and somebody throws a drink on you, right, you're going to turn around, you're going to say, who threw the drink, who threw the drink, who threw the drink?
Right.
And basically, who you decide to blame might be driven by whoever you had a problem with when you went into the party, right? Mm-hmm. Politics works the same way. So Republicans believe, and they have been proven correct for, the last decade or so, they believe that they can always find a way to blame their government failures on Democrats. Mm-hmm. Or if they can't blame it entirely on Democrats, when it comes down to vote, they can find an issue that their voters will care about more. So look, you can go back to 2024. It was a year ago that Donald Trump got elected. Kamala Harris was talking about economic issues. Mm-hmm. Kamala Harris was talking about health care. Right. Kamala Harris was talking about immigration. But what did you hear people talking about? Republicans were like, yeah, but what about trans kids in high school? And what about DEI and gay marriage? Right. So you had a lot of people who decided, I care about fictitious DEI and critical race theory and trans kids in bathrooms playing sports more than I care about my health care bill. Mm-hmm. So the issue that Republicans can always stand on is they think at the end of the day, they can throw some cultural red meat at their voters and still keep them. And so far, they have been correct. We saw something different on this last Tuesday, but who knows how that will play out next year. Yeah. That's the thing that they're still trying to gamble on.
Well, so then when we think about the Democrats and the sort of battle that's going on between factions inside the Democratic Party, the sort of and I'm gonna really reduce this down right here, but this sort of one faction that's like, we got to go after Republicans or Trump supporting people and bring them over to our side, right? And another faction that's essentially like, we need to dig into our base and make sure the millions and millions of people who didn't show up in 2024 actually show up in these next election cycles. Are the folks who are saying we got to go after these Trump-leaning people inside the Democratic Party, do they have an argument then? If we just saw on Tuesday, I think something like 8 counties that voted for Trump in California voted for Prop 50, right? Do they have an argument?
Well, you got to understand who's making the argument. The first group of people making that argument are mostly consultants.
Yeah.
It's not the actual elected officials. It's the people who get paid to do this. Right. They are obsessed with doing that because that makes them a lot of money, right? So it's not that there's not real tension within the party on this. I'm not a Democrat. I just know a lot of consultants. There's not real tension in the party on this. What's happening is people are recognizing that politics, surprise, surprise, politics is local. And so you just have to tailor your message, right? Mm-hmm. Mary Sheffield works great getting elected at 38 years old as the first black woman to be elected mayor of Detroit. Mary Sheffield probably couldn't win in Atlanta, right? Mm-hmm. You know, Zohran Mamdani probably couldn't win in Charlotte, right? Yeah, so right. You have to be reasonable about, like, all right, some of these issues I could run on here, and then at the same time you've got Seattle, right, where you got Bruce Harrell, who might win in this runoff. He's being challenged by a younger white woman who's far to hit left. Seattle is a really liberal city, and he might be the winner, even though he's more conservative. Right. So it's not tension. It's recognizing you can't serve everybody the same thing off the menu. Some people like a little extra spice. Some people like it heated in the middle. And some people like some relish on the side. If you want to have a good restaurant, you got to have a menu that's diverse. Right.
And I think that's, as we think about 2026 and the midterms, I think that is important because we just saw it play out, right, in different places right across the country where people built their campaigns around what they think their electorate was going to be moved by the most. Mm-hmm. And we'll see that also playing out next year when we have, Senate races from Ohio to Georgia, right, to all places in between, and they're going to run different campaigns. And I think that this is an important point because people need to play to their electorate, right, and their electorate may not be the folks, as you just said, they may not be the folks who just elected Zohran Mamdani, but they are the people who just elected Abigail Spanberger.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Most of this stuff isn't rocket science. It's not. Donald Trump wouldn't have worked in 1994, right? People would have thought he was a clown and a moron, whatever. Like, some of this is just common sense. Yeah. I don't even know that I would say that Abigail Spanberger is center-right. Abigail Spanberger makes sense for the state of Virginia. Mm-hmm. And she was also running against kind of a loon, a right-wing loon.
And then there's that.
Went the World Series. And that's another part of it. Like, you have to realize who you're running against. I suspect if Zohran Mamdani was not running against, Cuomo, who has, like, sort of just massive corruption scandals, maybe he doesn't win. But, when you're running against the boogeyman, it's a lot easier to look like the hero.
Yep, that's right. All right. This has been, the sort of shifting even today has been like a lot. So I really appreciate you, Jason, for coming on and talking through this with all of us, and appreciate your comment. I think it's a good, the perspective I think is really important for people as we are all trying to make sense of what is happening in this country right now. So thank you so much for joining us. When we come forward, we're going to talk.
Thank you. Anytime.
Of course. When we come forward, we're going to talk a little bit more about SNAP, and then at 5 o'clock, the hour we will be talking about more around the elections. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
More of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Senate leaders from both parties are introducing new bills to end the government shutdown. Democratic leader Chuck Schumer says Democrats will back the GOP's House-passed bill if it includes a one-year Obamacare credit extension.
Democrats would like to see an end to this shutdown.
Earlier, a GOP plan to pay federal workers during the trip to Dubai reportedly paid for by Qatar. The DOJ is probing whether the trip to a UN climate conference violated campaign finance or bribery laws. Bowser's office says it was a routine business trip to promote DC investment. And Sean Diddy Combs' sobriety took a hit after prison officials at Fort Dix in New Jersey caught him with homemade alcohol. He avoided a unit transfer and will stay put for now. The rapper is serving a 50-month sentence for Mann Act violations. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Problems continue in Carson for the 405, not just the northbound side, but also the southbound side. This is just north of Wilmington Avenue. A jackknife big rig. It's causing a terrible drive for you. Carpool 2 left blocked in both directions. Southbound loading up from the 105 and northbound all the way from Cherry getting out of Long Beach. It's terrible. Also in Carson, 405 southbound before Avalon Boulevard. Oh, just what you need, a crash. And this one is blocking the carpool lane out into that mess away from the 105 freeway. Torrey, stall for the 210 eastbound before Buena Vista. Middle lane block, delays out of Pasadena, getting away from Mountain.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Important game for the USC football team tonight at the Coliseum. The number 19 Trojans are at home against Northwestern at 6-2 overall. The Trojans need a win to remain in contention for the 12-team NCAA playoffs. 3 losses could knock them out of consideration. UCLA is back in action tomorrow night after a bye week. The Bruins take on Nebraska at the Rose Bowl. Interesting game for UCLA interim coach Tim Skipper. Skipper needs to impress the administration to show he can get the team back on track after a major setback in their last game. A 56-6 loss at number 2 Indiana. 6 o'clock kickoff tomorrow night. Fox Sports will have live coverage if you're not going to the game. The top HBCU football game this weekend features Howard at South Carolina State. Howard, known to some folks as the real HU, has not won at South Carolina State since 2017. South Carolina State has won 4 straight. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Break out the champagne. Everybody get a glass.
Tavis Smiley is now ranked number 16 nationally and the highest rated talk show hosted by an African American on the 2025 Talkers Heavy 100 list of the most important talk radio hosts in the nation. Last year, Tavis ranked number 33 and the year before, number 45. The Tavis Smiley Show has rapidly expanded its national syndication to now include nearly 50 radio stations across the country and counting. Congratulations, Tavis.
Yay, yay!
The holidays can be a time of increased stress for those struggling with opioid or stimulant addiction. They can also be a time for pause, reflection, opportunity, and new beginnings. This holiday season, choose treatment and recovery, embrace the company of family and friends, and create special moments. Find a proven opioid or stimulant addiction treatment provider near you at choosechangeca.org.
Looking for a purposeful and passionate way to make a difference in your community? Volunteer with our Senior Medicare Patrol and help prevent Medicare fraud. S&P volunteers work in their community educating peers about healthcare fraud and how to prevent and detect it. Free training starts soon. Check us out online or at an S&P open house near you. We're on a mission to stop fraud. Join our team. You make a difference. Visit caspvolunteer.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders,
volunteers, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580, standing with you in perilous times. If you've been impacted by the federal government shutdown or the discontinuation of SNAP benefits, you can find a food bank near you that's offering free groceries by going to lafoodbank.org or call 211. Additionally, LA County offers free meals at certain parks. There are meals and snacks for kids and seniors. Visit parks.lacounty.gov to find out which centers are offering which programs and to register in advance. And in addition to offering 2 free meals per day for all students, the LA Unified School District provides weekend meal kits for its students by request. The meal kits can be picked up on Fridays at grab-and-go locations. Please visit lausd.org/Cafe LA. That's lausd.org/CAFELA. We keep us safe. We keep us provided for. We keep us connected. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. Let's get back to more of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is Adrianne Shropshire, and I'm so glad that you all are joined and tuned in. I see you all in the chat on Facebook Live, and I appreciate you all for tuning in. I do want to go back to what I said just before we went to the break, and that is to ask you all to consider taking a few minutes to join KBLA Talk 1580 in supporting St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in fighting childhood cancer and sickle cell. You could join with as little as $19 a month pledge. You can call 1-800-411-9898 to become a donor, to become a partner. You can get a T-shirt. This one that I'm wearing. If you're on YouTube, you know I'm wearing a shirt that says "This shirt saves lives," and one could be yours. One could be yours. I don't know where the camera is, but I think I just did it. But you could have one too by joining and pledging $19 a month. Your donation will help to save lives. Again, that's 1-800-411-9898, and you can help families facing childhood cancer, sickle cell, and other life-threatening diseases. I wanted to go back before we get into conversation about the sort of back and forth around SNAP. But I said a couple things when I was talking with Jason Johnson about the election, and I wanted to just reiterate those because I know that I was just throwing stuff out that may not have wasn't totally in context, right? But I was just noting, and again, we'll talk about this at 5 o'clock with Cornell Belcher, but I was just noting some of the election results, right? Again, like there was this sort of attempt on Wednesday for by the Republicans to sort of spin the victories as it's just blue states, voting for blue people, right? Or blue cities just voting as blue cities do. But that wasn't actually the case, right? Again, you had 8 counties that voted for Donald Trump. Here in California, 8 counties in California that voted for Donald Trump that actually voted yes on Prop 50. So this is not just Democrats in Democratic states doing Democratic things. These are people who actually supported Trump actually moving and saying, no, we actually want to register our opposition to what is happening in this country. Again, I think I also said we had, counties in Virginia moving to the left. We had statewide victories, Democratic statewide victories in Georgia that had not happened in decades. And so I wanted to note that in the conversation, because I think it also plays into where we are right now in this sort of fight to end the government shutdown and make sure that that people don't lose their health care or aren't able to afford health care in the process, and also what's going on with SNAP. I think Democrats can and should be emboldened by those victories. So I want to welcome to the show our friend, my sometimes co-host, but always very insightful in terms of our conversations, and that is political journalist Anoa Changa. Anoa, how you doing?
Hi, Adrian. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So things were wild. And I want to say like this week, but really it's been even in the last couple of hours, right? Where we have a lot of back and forth, both on the shutdown, but also on SNAP. And there's the contrast, I think, between what our government is willing to spend money on and what they're not willing to spend money on is very striking. It should tell us everything that we need to know about this administration and the Republican Party right now. So I think the one that has been used the most is the idea that we won't spend the money that we need to support and help feed 42 million Americans, but we can send $40 billion to Argentina to bail them out. Right. So
facts.
The priorities, right, seem to be very clear. So your thoughts on that. Like, it isn't as if the government isn't spending money on things, right? But their priorities also seem to be incredibly clear.
I mean, their priorities are incredibly clear, and Donald Trump in particular has had multi-million-dollar trips and excursions on the taxpayers' dime during the shutdown. He can find money from his, not saying that I am in favor of private individuals funding the role of the government, but he was able to find upwards of $300 million for his ballroom. Yes, right. Like he's demolishing the work of Black folks as we speak on multiple levels. So they're finding money to do things. And the thing with the SNAP thing too is like there was actually a bill also that was started in the Senate that has some Republican support. All the Democrats were on board to fund SNAP. Like this was a completely avoidable crisis. And I was listening to Professor Jason Johnson, your earlier guest, talking about how there was a calculus that these people are, sacrificial lambs that the public won't care about, the 40 plus. But like this was totally avoidable. Like they have pre-funded SNAP in the prior shutdown. And, there's a bill. Like, they could have taken this up. They've taken up these other issues. They could have taken this up as well.
Yeah, I think that what does stand out really is the thing that you just said, which is like this is a crisis of their own making. And I think Dr. Johnson was making the point too, is that not only is this a crisis of their own making, but creating this crisis helps them do things that they've been saying that they wanted to do, right? Helping them to do things like, eliminate, more and more and more government jobs, right? The sort of like there perhaps many reasons, right, why this government shutdown works for them, but not the least of which is because it drives their priorities. And we talk about, and I think even you and I have talked about many times the sort of big pieces of Project 2025 and how they are moving forward, right? And so every crisis then becomes an opportunity for them to advance, right, their efforts to undo American government, right, as well as American democracy. And this crisis is no different, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And just also having people so focused on, it's really hard to concentrate when you're hungry, right? it's really hard to concentrate when you're sick, with the expiration of ACA tax credits, extended premium tax credits at the end of this year. Like, these things make it very difficult for you to just do the basics. So how are you going to oppose fascism? How are you going to attend the next rally, go to the next organized event, knock on doors for, the candidate that's going to bring the change we need in your community? How are you going to do those things if you're hungry, if you're sick, or, heaven forbid, deceased, right? Like, they are intentionally trying to weed us out so that they can continue to upscale what they're doing and not have any opposition in the process.
Well, it's so right. So the crisis is many-fold, right? Which I think you just started to. So there's both the fact that our government is non-functional, right? That people are not getting paid. Right, for the work that they're doing, both in the U.S. and abroad, apparently, that people are, having to lean on other people in the community, whether they are mutual aid efforts or their churches or their food banks or food pantries, having to lean on others to be able to provide for their families. And before any of that, there was already an economic crisis. Right. So regardless of what the president of the United States says, grocery prices are still up. Right. Energy costs are still high. Right. And so people are grappling with, working people in general. Right. Are grappling with all of this crisis. It would seemingly, right, make it difficult for people to say, like, OK, well, I'm going to and now I'm going to go out and fight. Right. And now I'm going to go out and register my opposition. And yet people have, right? So when we think about No Kings from, I don't even remember, a couple weeks, 3 weeks ago, right? Massive historic protest numbers. And then Tuesday's election, I think that this is, there may be people among the folks who are hurting right now. Maybe that might be some of those folks who didn't show up in November, right? Who didn't show up last November because they didn't know if it mattered. They didn't know if their vote would matter. They didn't know, they had been targeted with propaganda, right, and misinformation, and so they stayed home. But this crystallizes it for people, right? So even if, right, you are struggling right now, there is an actual name and an actual face, right, to the people who are causing that suffering. So when we come forward, we're going to continue this conversation with Anoa Changa. This is the Black Pack here at KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
You're part of the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire on KBLA Talk 1580.
JP Morgan Chase offers tips for the local business owners in 2025. Small business landscape is ever changing, and the Los Angeles market is no exception. A startup or legacy business, revisiting your mission statement and recalibrating offerings can renew opportunities for growth and innovations. Programs like Chase for Business Coaching for Impact gives entrepreneurs access to expert guidance, helping you streamline operations, strategize your growth, and navigate complex challenges. Businesses with a clear sense of purpose can navigate any challenge effectively, but also build stronger customer loyalty. Visit chase.com/coaching for impact for more information. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has WorkSource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services resources for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewdd.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
You don't talk to me like that. You don't talk to your mommy like that.
Unlike your mama, we can handle your black talk on the Black Pack with Adrianne Shropshire.
We are talking with Anoa Changa, who we appreciate very much coming on and having this conversation with us about all the back and forth around SNAP, certainly over the last couple of weeks and even over the last couple of hours. Anoa, I think you probably saw that a judge, the Trump administration appealed, which is just so, I mean, I don't even, there literally are no words here, right? The Trump administration.
Doubling down on starving people?
Right. We're basically like, yeah, no, make us help people not starve, right? Go appealing a judge's order telling them to fully fund SNAP, and then just before we came on the air, the court that was hearing that appeal said, no, actually, you need to go on and and do what the government is supposed to do for its people. So there's been all this back and forth. I think that we also know that before, and we're talking this also with Dr. Jason Johnson, is that, there were cuts in the big stupid bill, right, that were going to be damaging to people anyway, right? We know that the Trump administration has also cut about $500 million, right, in assistance for food banks, right? As we're going into this crisis, they're cutting money for food banks. And so there is something, I think, when we think about our social safety net, right, and the ways that it is being undermined, I just like, what is this moment that we're in, right, say about the stability of our social safety net, particularly when we find ourselves in crisis?
Yeah, and I think we never really feel the burden or the weight on this system until there's a natural disaster or something like that, right, or some type of major crisis. This is another one of these fabricated crises of the Trump administration's creation to, as you were talking earlier, to justify the disruption that it's trying to cause, right, the dismantling of the federal government. And so, when we've already talked about over the years about the weakening and just the loss of support in the social safety net from Medicaid. There's still several states, including my state of Georgia, that has not expanded Medicaid, for example, right? These cuts that just happened with the SNAP program, and just even the insistence on adding the work requirements to Medicaid as a federal program
for people who are already working. Yes,
for people who are already working. Majority of the people who receive Medicaid, majority of people who receive SNAP are already working. These work requirements don't work. Georgia is a prime example of it. They're costly and administrative burdens, but also this fact that right now we have a shutdown where furloughed workers are increasing their reliance on food banks. And now we have SNAP, 1 week of SNAP not funded so far, and who knows how long once they finally go ahead and do it, how long it takes for the funds to actually load on people's cards.
Right.
But now we have millions more families right? Having to rely on these systems. And so, like, that just shows that we pay taxes for a reason, right? We pay taxes to be distributed in a way to make sure that the commons, the broader, our communities are cared for. And this shows that we're getting taxed to the hilt, more so than Trump and his cronies, and we have to find a way to show up and fill in gaps. But how do you fill in gaps when you don't have insurance? Like, how do you fill in gaps for people when, you know, they can't afford basic needs? It becomes a shared cost burden that's being shifted from these corporations that aren't paying their staff enough money to begin with, so they have to receive assistance, like your Walmarts, Amazons, et cetera. I mean, there's so much that's happening right now that we really need to take more ownership, right, of the way in which these people who claim to represent, you know, the country and our interests are actually doing that.
Yeah. It also, so, you know, what we've heard, particularly around the elections, right, when or Tuesday election night, when we heard folks saying, you know, let's go out and vote for the future that we want, right? Let's imagine, right, the kind of country that we could actually be living in, right? And let's vote for that thing. But it also strikes me that there is in crisis that there is, and it shouldn't have to be this way, like what you just described about, you know, millions more people needing to rely on food banks. That is the case. Now, that's not the future that we want, right? But it is the case that we're having to ask other folks to step up and to fill in the gap. So we talked a little bit here about mutual aid, you know, and you know, the folks that are standing up and trying to step into the gap. I mean, no one's going to replace the role of government in this, but there is a role, though, for civic organizations, for nonprofits, for charities, to really for us to think about how and what people need to be doing or can be doing in this moment. And so talk about that a little bit, because I know that you are in relationship with lots of folks who are trying to figure out how they stand in the gap right now.
Yeah, so like what we've been seeing is, like, you know, with mutual aid, you know, I just did an interview with someone the other day, and she was just talking about how a lot of times our communities think about mutual aid as like charity and only like a gap filling when emergency happens. But mutual aid really is like how we provide care for each other, right? It's how we strengthen ourselves, because when these systems fail us and they were never meant to include us in the first place, I mean, this is how we're able to like still move ahead anyway. And so we are seeing people do things like, you know, community refrigerators. We are seeing even state and local governments, not Georgia, unfortunately, but we are seeing some state and local leaders also like giving resources to food banks and other local groups and communities, and where they're able to directly supplement themselves. But like we're seeing, you know, folks do their own collections. Like I've seen calls for people to start adopting like maybe their local school to see what school families might need, right? People are trying to figure out, I think right now we have organized mutual aid networks in a lot of places, Chicago, LA, and also DC, and also these are cities, New York, these are cities also that are already dealing with the other crisis, right, of Trump's made-up immigration nonsense and the scourge of ICE, you know, coming down on families in their communities, right? So we're seeing communities already organizing on multiple different levels, and now we have this on top of it. I know in Chicago there were folks that were already trying to like help do things like make sure people could get groceries and stuff, because people were starting to shy away from being in public places. We've seen video of people being stopped in like a Walmart parking lot for looking like they might not belong here or whatever. So like people are already afraid to go out in public because of ICE raids. And then, you know, now we have families like struggling and potentially like the federal government trying to starve people. So like there are groups that have been trying to figure out like how to help people get like their groceries and other basic needs already in place. But this adds like an increased burden. So the one thing that I think people can do is like, who are the trusted voices in your community? Who are the trusted organizations? And seeing how you can plug in and provide support. And then, you know, just sometimes even just the basic, like, I know the different grocery stores, because we're getting to the holiday season. Like we'll do things like, oh, you can donate for $5 or $10 and for a bag of food or whatever.
Right,
but like there's a real need to just like open up our eyes a little bit and see who's already moving in our neighborhood, and then maybe you and your neighbors could get, or you and your neighbors can get together and just listen and reach out to whether they're existing programs that maybe are like they're shorthanded, lack of funds, whatever. Like just figuring out what you can do to pitch in.
Yep, I appreciate that because there is something that everyone can do. We're gonna have to take care of ourselves. We are the ones that we are always waiting for.
Absolutely.
And on that note, I want to encourage you all to support the good work of the folks at St. Jude. When St. Jude opened in 1962, children's cancer was considered incurable, and today survival rates have risen from 20% to over 80%. So with your support, they won't stop doing that work. You can join us for $19 a month, a pledge that will get you this T-shirt, and your donation can help save lives. So again, 1-800-411-9898 to support St. Jude. And I want to thank you so much, Anoa, for joining us and talking us through more of the madness, but which I keep saying to people, one day we're going to have something really good to talk about. But thanks for joining. More when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Senate leaders from both parties are introducing new bills to end the government shutdown. Democratic leader Chuck Schumer says Democrats will back the GOP's House-passed bill if it includes a one-year Obamacare credit extension.
Democrats would like to see an end to this shutdown.
Earlier, a GOP plan to pay federal workers during the shutdown was blocked by Democrats. Washington, D.C.'s Black Mayor Muriel Bowser is under federal investigation over a 2023 trip to Dubai reportedly paid for by Qatar. The DOJ is probing whether the trip to a UN climate conference violated campaign finance or bribery laws. Bowser's office says it was a routine business trip to promote D.C.